The Fourth Amendment is the first of the three amendments that sort of protect us from governmental or unreasonable, it should be, governmental interference in our lives. And it begins with the concept of unreasonable search and seizure, that the government can just not barge into your house and start tearing it apart unless it can show probable cause, supported by oath or affirmation, and particularly describing the place to be searched and the persons or things to be seized. So you can get into things called the fruit of the poisonous tree if the government doesn't lay out exactly what it thinks is going on inside that property, say they think that there's a racketeer in a bank robbing ring, and they go in and they discover a number of firearms in the place, and now you've got a felon in possession of firearms. Some people would tell us that's an abridgment of the Second Amendment, that we can't limit people's rights to have firearms, but felons lose a lot of rights by what happens. But anyway, the case here is unreasonable searches and seizures. And you can find a lot of case law that gives the police broad latitude in terms of search, but also doesn't just let them walk in and go, we think there's something illegal going on, let us search. You have to specify exactly what it is. And, if they're looking for drugs and they find other contraband that wasn't in the warrant, that's sufficient. Let's take a stop and look at, because you're also securing your persons. One of the things that most of us may or may not know about is something called a Terry stop, Terry, in which the police are basically able to tap you down for their protection. If you've given them some questionable answers to their queries about who you are, why you're in the area, that sort of thing, and it depends, of course, on time of day and what you're doing, what sort of furtive glances you may do. But if during a lawful Terry stop, the police find contraband on you, that's not going to be suppressed in a court of law. That's why oftentimes we'll hear now on television the police say, do you have anything on you that I need to know about? Particularly, do you have any sharp objects? Do you have any contraband of any kind? That may be a trickery where they're trying to get you to say exactly what's going on beforehand, but it may or may not be worthwhile. Certainly, if you have a weapon on you, you should tell the police about that first. The Fifth Amendment. Now, this is kind of interesting. Whatever the language. Oh. There we go. I'm moving right into the language. This again is Cornell Law University. Notice that it sets up that we must have a presentment or indictment for a capital, that is, a death penalty or otherwise infamous crime, except during times of war. Nor shall any person be subject for the same offense to be twice put in jeopardy of life or limb. Now, one of the things you may need to worry about here, it is rare, however, okay, so thought while I was working, looking at double jeopardy, we cannot be tried for the same federal offense twice, but we might be tried for a state offense and a federal offense. and the procedural remedies in both courts are going to be slightly different. The way things proceed is slightly different. Most of the states have something mirroring this Bill of Rights, but it is very rare that it is more extensive than that given to us by the Constitution of the United States of America, in large part because the governments have a duty to protect us from one another, if you will, that their first duty is the general welfare of the public. And there's some bad people out there. And so, we're always going to have sort of a contest here between the individual rights of liberty and the individual rights to not be bothered in our home by the nefarious. So we can take the high-minded approach that we should strive mightily for each and every known felon to make sure they get all of these rights, and I think that's a given in the United States of America, but we also do not want to go beyond that. We don't need to invent rights for these individuals, because there's a limit to how much we should bend over for people who have violent tendencies. All right, so the next one is probably the most powerful. Nor shall anyone be compelled in any criminal case to be a witness against himself. We generally describe this as the right to be free from self-incrimination. Now, I'm going to have you pause here, and we're going to look at number 6, Amendment 6, in a second, because to me the best way to assert this right is to assert it through your lawyer. And that is not given to you until you're in the 6th Amendment. The right to a counsel is not given to you then. Refusing to speak to the police about anything may and will be used against you if you don't have an attorney present. If they ask you blah, 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 and you haven't asserted your right to counsel, if they ask you, well, isn't that your car? And they can tie the car to it, and you say, I choose not to be self-incriminated. You may be on great ground, but you may also be a silent use. You're rolling the dice a little bit. You're way better off with an attorney saying this for you. Let's also look at nor be deprived of life, liberty, or property without due process of law. Now, this sounds wonderful, but really it just means you're entitled to notice and a hearing. That means that you get a trial. Doesn't mean you necessarily get a perfectly fair trial. You get a trial like anybody else would get. The same thing is true for nor shall private property be taken for public use without just compensation. This is the well-settled right of the state to take land when it is needed. Highways, schools, public parks. We're getting into some places where we're beginning to do private or public condemnations for private goods, building a shopping mall. That's not necessarily one that I want to spend a great deal of time with, but it is definitely a problem for the people oftentimes who are displaced. They may own the home. It may have been in their family for a long time, and there may be no real replacement property close by. They may be effectively shut out of the housing market. Those are not directly considerations that are going to play in this, although we may find that the states begin to become more aware of this, that if we're going to take public property, we need to give a market value that gives individuals some opportunity to relocate in a relatively equivalent location. And we can see this in our urban area that, one little town in our outer counties is very different from another one, and that the road access and all of that gets challenging under each of these. So I'm going to back up one more, and we'll go back into the Sixth Amendment. And this is criminal prosecutions. This one, to me, is the most powerful of them all, although certainly very powerful Fourth and Fifth. And we have a problem. Oh, there we go. Maybe I've clicked it too many times. It does not seem to be loading. But here we have jury trial, right to confront, and right to counsel. Looks like maybe it's coming in at this point. Let me go here. Well, this is highly disappointing. My computer seems to have locked out, but let me, so you're looking at some pretty boring stuff here. But the text of the Constitution essentially gives us the right to a jury trial in major crimes, and the right to confront our accuser, to right to have the sheriff go out and seize witnesses on our behalf and bring them into court. This is a pretty rare right throughout the world, that we, the accused, have the right to have the government go out and get our witnesses and drag them into court. And that if the witnesses choose to, disobey the subpoenas and et cetera, the court may declare a mistrial simply because we were denied the right to get our witnesses in. Now that, of course, we can't get the witnesses to agree to refuse, and then we're going to get it. The courts are going to be very reluctant to go down that path. But, if it's malfeasance by the prosecutor to bring these people in, then we've got a case to say that we should have a mistrial. We were not able to confront our accusers. And then I'll end with the most powerful is that we have the right to counsel. And I think you can see just by me walking through these rights and giving you a very gloss description of them, that if you're accused of a felony, get a lawyer. Anything that you think sounds like felony, do not speak to the police first. I want you to cooperate with law enforcement, but do so within your legal rights. Law enforcement is not our enemy by any means. Law enforcement tend to be real good people. We can certainly bring in a parade of horribles about law enforcement doing X, Y, and Z, but that's because they're also human. And, you cannot perfectly screen every individual before you hire them. And some cops wear a heavy badge. I'll grant you that as well. But, generally, police officers operate within the law, want to see the law well enforced, and are people trying to do a tough job. At the same time, we need the right to have counsel. We're guaranteed it in the United States of America, and we're blessed that the founders saw the need to put this into the Constitution, and that our courts and most prosecutors have felt that this is worth upholding. Thanks.